Ruin My Childhood.
This is Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Mike.
And I'm Kat.
And what are we covering today, Kat?
Bring it on.
Bring it on. So is this a movie you saw with any kind of frequency when you were younger?
Yes, definitely. Pretty much at every single friend's house.
Right. I don't think I saw this in theaters, but my parents definitely rented this, and every time it was on TV, we would watch it for some reason. I think my dad really liked the movie.
Because it's great?
Yeah, definitely at friends' houses we watched it, and this was definitely something we quoted. This came out in 2000s when I was in 6th and 7th grade, and so people quoted this movie all the time on the bus.
It has amazing one-liners. The entire thing is full of great one-liners.
Right. I don't really remember too much about this movie. Like, I remember the overall plot. White girls steal black girls' routines, and they have to bring it on and compete at a cheerleading competition.
I don't even remember the whole plot.
And then I would just remember spirit fingers.
You call those spirit fingers? These are spirit fingers.
And then that's all I really remember. I remember Gabrielle Union's in it, Kirsten Dunst, and that one guy who's
Gabrielle Union, or whoever that immortal is.
Right. And whoever, I don't remember his name, but he was in this, he was in Clock Stoppers and Swim Fan. Like, he was in everything for like a 3 to 5 year period. And then
the guy with the hair lip that was never surgically corrected. Or is that just how he holds his mouth?
I think that's just how he holds his mouth.
Or
anything you want to call out, how it made you feel on the
it
inside?
made me feel? I don't really remember that much about how it made me feel. I just remember it being really funny.
Yeah, I remember it being really funny too. Oh, Eliza Dushku's in it, and I was like in love with her around that time.
How many things did she even do?
She was in this, and she was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, that's why she's so popular. I feel like someone could have only ever been on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and have disappeared into the ether after, and they would still have huge fans.
Yeah, that show's
it's ridiculous.
Classic. It was a comic book afterwards. I think they want to do a reunion show. I don't know if that's happening, but they definitely did. Yeah, I actually went back and watched the first 5 or 6 episodes like a couple of years ago. And they weren't very good.
I used to love Charmed, and I think it's kind of in the same vein where back in the day it was really fun to watch, but I tried rewatching Charmed recently, and it did not go well.
Oh, well,
I
that
feel like
ruined
Buffy
those
kinda...
episodes.
I only got like 10 minutes into it. I feel like Buffy kind of falls into that realm.
It probably just, I think
old
it probably,
fantasy doesn't...
I think Buffy probably would still be decent when you got to like the 3rd and 4th seasons, like the middle of the show, but the beginning stuff's probably bad. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Bring It On. And I think maybe we should get to our fans.
We have fans?
We have a few.
Maybe you should just call them listeners. I don't even know if I'm a fan, so let's not be putting words in people's mouths. Dysalexic said, "That's all right, that's okay, you're gonna pump our gas someday."
David Grout said, "I remember everything about this movie. I saw it 5 times in theaters. Jesus. God, I was in love with Kirsten Dunst. Hardcore. Awesome. Oh, wow. Like, totally freaked me out. I mean, right on. The Toros sure are number 1. And then he also said 3 out of 4 members of the girls' music group Black, spelled Blaque, were in the film on the Clover's Cheer Squad. They made a music video for the film called As If. Also, Natina Reed of the music group Black, who starred in this film, passed away in 2012 after being hit by a car. Jesus.
Thanks for the downer, David.
And the majority of the Clover's Cheer Squad were actual cheerleaders.
Well, I mean...
That makes sense.
Thank you, Captain Obvious. No, thank you. That was a great comment. The Sacred Sailor said, "Love, love, love. I can still quote this movie and do sometimes. These cheers give me life as a kid. You've been touched by an angel, girl."
Right? Arnolfo Lopez says, "Great sound mix."
What?
Great sound mix.
Did it?
I don't know. Maybe he meant soundtrack.
I mean, it's no Bohemian Rhapsody, but I'm sure the sound mixing is good. Did
sure
he do the sound mixing on it? Like, should we look up the
No,
IMDb?
Sam Kitty Hare says, "I have the whole first cheer memorized and then 3 monkey emojis with their eyes covered, along with most of the movie."
Way to be. You know, the one-liners pop into my head all the time. I think if I were to try and rattle them off, I'd come up short because honestly, like, I can't even name all of the states if you put me on the spot. But in real life, I use these one-liners all the time. All the time.
Once we watch the movie, I'm sure we'll remember some that you do say.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've got one from Eden Mermaid. It says, I remember everything. I can recite the entire movie. Ha ha.
All right. Should we just go watch it then?
I think we should go watch it.
I'm sexy, I'm cute, I'm popular to boot. I'm bitchin', great hair, the boys all love to stare. Who am I? Just guess. Guys wanna touch my chest. I'm rockin', I smile, and many think I'm vile. I'm flying, I jump, you can't look but don't you hump.
All right, we're back. We watched Bring It On. The first part of the movie we watched with our buddy Jack, but he left.
He was just here for the Thai food.
And I'm ready to talk about it. Are you ready to talk about it?
I'm ready to talk about it.
So my first impression of this movie, it is a lot raunchier than I remember it.
Yes.
They're quite, like, the opening song is pretty raunchy.
There must have been a few TV edits.
Right, there had to have been. Because there's even a scene, and we'll get into more detail about this scene, because I actually think it's pretty problematic. But they're like cheerleaders who get like fingered while they're on the pyramid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't recall that at all.
Not okay.
Yeah, it's pretty problematic.
It is.
But the movie was pretty funny. There were a lot of good little insults and one-liners and whatnot.
It is. It's entertaining the entire way through, and I didn't think it would hold my attention this well. I definitely don't remember it being this much of, it's almost like a satire of other teen movies in the genre to some extent.
I don't even know if it's a satire as much as it's very aware of what it is. Like, all the actors in this movie, you can tell, at least they seem like they're having fun. The way they deliver the lines, they say everything super cheesy. So they obviously know this is not Shakespeare, that it's meant to be lame.
Right.
And they just have fun with it. So I was really impressed with that. But
they pour on the cheese.
before we summarize it, I just kind of want, like, these are like the first lines of the movie. I'm not going to read the whole cheer, but a character named Big Red, who's the former lead cheerleader in a fantasy sequence, says, I'm sexy, I'm cute,
She's
I'm popular
captain
to boot.
of the cheer squad,
Yep.
Michael.
And then somebody else pops on and is like, I'm bitchin', I'm great. The boys all love to stare. I'm wanted, I'm hot, I'm everything you're not. I'm pretty, I'm cool, I dominate the school. And then it goes on a little bit and it says, guys want to touch my chest. Where was it? You can look, but don't you hump? Yeah, and then it goes on saying we're beautiful.
I'm major, I roar. I swear I'm not a whore.
Yeah, and then there's another, she's perky, she's cute, she's fun. It's very... very, like, sexually suggestive at the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
It's also hilarious because this was back in the day when high schoolers were usually played by 25 to 30-year-olds, and it is so glaringly obvious.
Well, it's interesting. So I actually looked that up. A couple of the characters were teenagers still. Mm-hmm. So Kirsten Dunst was 19, so she was still technically a teen. There was one cheerleader on the Clovers, and then everybody else was mostly under 25, so 20 to 25, except for Gabrielle Union, who was 27.
Oh my god. They all look really old.
Yeah, they did.
But also they did a lot more makeup back then. Like, the 90s was really heavy makeup, and so that aged everyone up. Definitely had something to do with it.
And then, but what's nice is a lot of times, even today, they are doing better at casting younger people, or people who look like they're maybe 18, 19, 20 versus looking like they're 25 or 30.
Right.
But you still every once in a while get one random character in it who's clearly 30 in the background. They did at least everybody looks like they were 25 to 30 in this movie, all the background actors. Like, no, they all looked way too old.
At least they were consistent.
Except for the one character's sister who, while everybody else looked like 25 to 30 in the high school, she looked like she was 8. But to summarize this movie, really, really simple plot. Kirsten Dunst plays Torrance. She is the new captain of the cheer squad. And this team that she's on has gone to the national champions and won 5 years in a row. So she's got this big legacy she's got to kind of live up to. And then she finds out that for the last, 4 or 5 years, her cheerleading squad's been cheating and stealing routines from an inner city school who never had the money to be able to compete. And so now she's got to deal with that and all the things that go with it. And they kind of have a rivalry, and they have to bring it on.
Thank you. for that summary. Should we start at the top?
Yeah, let's go through it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll follow your lead.
One of the things I thought was funny is the character, I don't remember his name, but the boyfriend at the beginning of the movie, he's going off to college.
Cliff?
Cliff is the guy she likes.
Oh.
Yeah, that's Jesse Bradford.
Adam?
Maybe it's Adam.
Jake? I don't know.
I don't remember. I didn't write down.
Literally be any of those white boy names.
I just wrote Dick Boyfriend down.
He's the quintessential preppy jock. Like, he got sent... I mean, the character is in a public school, but he is the typical WASP who got sent to the 4-year prep school, and then, you know, Grandpa sent him to Rutgers. Like, he's that kind of guy.
Right. I think his name was Aaron, actually.
Aaron. There you go. Adam, Jake, Aaron.
Yeah, whatever. Whitey. So, his character is just... He's one of those characters that you see in a lot of movies like this where they're in a position that's not typically masculine, like nurse or male cheerleader, but they act like they're not in this weird thing, but they're kind of ashamed of it. So throughout the movie, he's like cheating on Torrance with this other one, but when that person finds out he's a cheerleader, she like dumps him right away. So he's kind of like ashamed of it, but he still looks at himself as like an alpha male kind of guy, but even though he's clearly not secure in his masculinity.
So at the beginning of the movie, he is going away to college. Torrance is a year younger than him, and he's like, yeah, we're going to stay together. Next year, we're going to dominate college together. They're going to stay together. But then he's like immediately just banging everyone at college. So that's how she kind of ends up being interested in Cliff, because he's sort of there and her boyfriend's not, and he's flat out dodging her calls.
Right, he's trying to ghost her, and he
much.
Accidentally picks up the phone because it was first thing in the morning and he wasn't awake.
Right.
So one of the things, going back to Aaron really quick, like the first line of the actual part of the movie that's not musical is she goes to kiss him and he's like, I can't mac on you in front of the parentals. And then he peels out right in front of the parentals. So like that's I think the first line in the movie, which is, it's kind of funny. Like it really sets the tone for the movie.
It does.
But one of the things,
it tells you exactly who he is.
Right. And he has like that 90s like I feel like he has the same vehicle that like Zach Morris had in Saved by the Bell,
right?
Like
and
that weird Jeep.
They sort of set his character up to be like, you think he's just not out of the closet, and then later on you find out that he's kind of weird because he's just cheating on her the whole time,
right? And also not secure in his masculinity,
right?
So one of the things that confused me about the movie is it gets to her school and she's in the locker room. Everyone's like, oh, who's gonna get the captainship or whatever, right? And so some people think it's going to be this rich girl on the team because her dad pays for all the uniforms and all the trips and whatnot, and we find out that it is in fact Kirsten Dunst's character Torrance. But what's weird is the cheerleading captain from the previous year is on campus on the first day of school, and they're like doing this like ceremony. Typically that kind of thing happens before the school year starts. Like cheerleaders have, because football team practices before the school year starts, cheerleaders do the same thing. They do, well, I don't know if it's actually tryouts. I don't know exactly how the cheerleading works, but I know for water polo, we started doing practices about 2-3 weeks before school actually officially started. And the cheerleaders would be out there practicing too, and they would already have the cheer captains assigned. So the first day of school, having last year's captain be there passing the torch or passing the baton or cheerleading stick or whatever it's called, spirit stick.
Spirit stick.
Doesn't really make sense to me.
Right. I mean, not a lot in the way that high schools operate are actually depicted correctly.
Right.
In film. Like, there are always, people who don't belong on campus just walking into campus. Like, right. No big deal.
Like, parents just show up.
Right.
So, what really kind of starts the movie is she immediately, for their first practice, wants to attempt this apparently what's supposed to be the most difficult pyramid for high school cheerleading. And so they attempt it, and this girl falls, and you see her in a neck brace, but it turns out she just broke both of her legs.
Just both of her legs.
Right, but it's just, they put this neck brace on, and so you think it's like a neck injury, which, I mean, I would rather have broken legs than a neck injury. But this causes them to have to do tryouts and find a new person, so that's where Eliza Dushku comes in, and she has this great scene where she shows up, and for whatever reason, the entire cheerleading squad hates her immediately. She's kind of got, not dreads, but kind of...
Greasy hair,
yeah. And she has like a fake tattoo on, and you know, she looks like this like rebel girl, but it turns out she was like on the cheerleading team, so clearly she
She was on the gymnastics
or
team.
that's right, gymnastics team.
And they want the Asian cheerleader's younger sister to be on the squad.
Right. So she does this they decide to pick on her and ask her to do all these really hard gymnastics moves, and she just does it. So she ends up on the team, and she ends up immediately becoming Torrance's best friend, essentially, in the movie, which to me doesn't...
She kind of takes her under her wing because she is so dedicated and so terrified of letting the team down because they're 5-time champions, 5 years in a row. Big Red has just passed the spirit stick to her. That's a lot of pressure. So she wants the best for the squad. She's not going to take no for an answer. And she needs there to be harmony in the squad in order to work together.
Right.
Like, I mean, realistically, what you're doing in a gymnastics team or in a cheerleading squad is very dangerous if you're not united.
There has to be a level of trust and respect.
Yeah. And everyone has to be on the same page of wanting the best in the squad.
Right. So they end up getting her there, and she immediately on their first practice just walks out because she recognizes a cheer. And so Torrance and her name was Missy, played by Eliza Dushku. They drive like 2 hours to Compton,
out of nowhere,
and go and look at a practice.
They leave practice and they don't really tell anyone where they're going.
Yeah, they just leave, and they go and find out that in fact they did cheat. So they hire a new guy to give them a new routine for the champion.
They hire a choreographer.
They hire a choreographer, like you said, to make this new routine for them, so that way they can go and be original, everything. And then it's weird. This guy's like a Nazi, and he just picks apart really problematic here too, where he's just like, "You're fat, your ass is too big, your makeup's great, but you have
great muscle tone. Tell that to your ass before it gets so big it needs its own zip code."
Right.
Something along those lines.
Right. And just all these things. Then to Torrance, like, "You're the captain, so you're the worst of them all." Like, doesn't even say anything. He's just like, "You're the worst."
Yeah.
And then he does, like, the routine really isn't that good.
No.
And they make them like go on a diet, and he keeps yelling at him about spirit fingers. And it turns out that routine he'd given to like 3 teams. So that was another thing. So they ended up having to have the training montage to go through and invent their own routine before the competition.
Yeah. So they did all this training with this guy, learned a new routine, kind of like against the judgment of most of the squad. And then they got to, what is it, like semifinals?
Yeah, so they got to the regionals, but they were guaranteed to get through because they were the previous champions, because, you know, movies.
Right. So they go out there and perform the same routine as the squad, like, right before them. And then realize, oh, so someone's peddling the same routine all up and down the coast.
That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does.
Oh, and what really sucks is, like you mentioned, a lot of the team didn't initially want to do a new routine, and the only reason they did was they were at the football game, and the football game was really like problematic because there was a lot of like homophobic jokes slung towards the male cheerleaders. This is also the scene where the girl gets fingered.
He's over there scamming on all your squirrel.
The Clovers show up and basically start mimicking the cheers at the exact same time that the Toros are doing it. So everybody in the audience realizes that these girls did steal these routines. And so the whole audience kind of like boos their hometown heroes and say, "You need to come up with new routines." So then the school...
You know, I don't really know if that entire audience would have understood what was going on there.
Because, and honestly, we know that the Toros, like, were stealing these things for a couple of years, but the general, like, audience wouldn't know. Like, how do they know that the girls who's showing up didn't do that? They steal it. Like, there's no real
They don't
proof.
even know who those girls are.
Exactly.
They don't know if it's like malicious or if they're having fun. I mean, if I saw that go down again, I'd be like, "That's weird. They should sit down."
It's a flash mob.
I guess.
But yeah, this is the same scene where just before the game starts, they're talking about why they joined cheerleading and whatnot. And one of the guys mentions that one of the girls on the squad always right before a lift will like loosen her panties. So her spanky pants, so he's able to like slide in.
Oh,
and
God.
You know, all the people around is like, "Oh my God," and he goes, "No, oh my God," or something like that. So
but she likes it,
right?
And then when it happens in front of everyone, she pretends to not like it,
which is
no one else cares,
right? Which they should care. That's wrong to be doing that, like, because like you said, there's got to be an element of trust and sport and everyone working together, and if they're doing that on the perimeter, they're not focusing on other people's safety,
right?
So that's a problem. But
And I mean, okay, so if someone's holding you up, they're bracing you somewhere like lower on your leg, like around your ankle, and then you're kind of sitting in their hand.
right.
So the majority of your body weight is going on that hand that's supposed to be on your butt. And if that's in your vagina, like I have been picked up by my crotch before and it is not fun.
Right.
I don't want to be picked up by my vagina.
So I think this particular lift, like both of her feet were on other people's shoulders.
Oh, God.
So that way, I think that's probably how they justify it. But
This is perilous to the vagine.
yeah, but basically what you said still, the thing that I have the issue with is you see her loosening it. She looks back at him and smiles, basically saying, I want you to do this. Which, okay, it's consensual, great.
It just doesn't even really make sense because spanky pants are just kind of like a second pair of underwear that you put over your underwear that are bigger than your underwear to hold your underwear and your vagina in.
Maybe she doesn't wear anything under the spanky pants.
That's gross.
Like, the biggest thing is she clearly wanted it and then changes, like, pretends. I think that's a problem.
It's like your second Speedo.
Yeah. Well, no, the reason you wear 2 Speedos is so
Oh,
if it rips, you're not freeballing
I'm
it.
just talking about it's for modesty's sake.
Right. So some of the other things that are weird in here that they bring up towards the beginning of the movie, but it doesn't really do any payoffs. Like there's this like animosity between Torrance and her mom. And it never really comes to like fruition. Like
It's really just an opportunity to show that the mother's not happy with Torrance's academic performance. Then you find out that Torrance is actually a really good student. She's just not like Ivy League focused on that. So she's
Right.
still pulling great grades, but her mom isn't happy until she does advanced chemistry, and then she's
Right.
like kind of on the fence. So I think it's just an opportunity to show that Torrance is more multifaceted. She actually is smart. She's not just a dumb cheerleader, but she's super dedicated to what she's doing.
right. And I like that you take that read
I think
on
that
it,
was the whole point of that interaction.
but I do wish that there was some sort of acknowledgement from the parents later on that like, hey, you did great, or even though she's completely stressed out about the whole cheerleading thing, she gets an exam or she gets a scholarship for her grades as well, I think would have been great.
Right.
And then having that reconciliation with the mom saying, look, I knew you could do this and someone needed to push you to do something beyond cheerleading.
And that might have been a scene that just didn't make
That
it into
got
the final cut
right.
because it didn't add too much and it was long on time. But pretty much the rest of the film, the only time we see the family is in an audience at a big performance.
Except for the brother.
Right.
Which the brother was the standard asshole little brother.
Little brother.
Everything, he like farts on her and stuff like that. He's just, yeah, he's kind of a dick, but it is what it is. Most of my notes are just one-liners. So, when Missy is doing her gymnastics, they were like, "What is she from Romania?" Like, I thought it's all one-liners. I don't really have my favorite one. I've actually said this before at work. This isn't a democracy; it's a cheerocracy.
I say that all the
Yeah,
time.
You're being a
cheer
cheer-tater. Yeah.
Missy's the poo, so take a big,
Big
whiff.
whiff. Yeah. I did like the really over the top flashback sequences when she
Oh, gosh.
when she drops the spirit stick. So, and this was another thing that
I love that.
I don't get. If cheerleading is her life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's been doing it her whole life, and that's the thing that's more important to her than college. You think she would know that you don't drop the spirit stick. And so she goes to this like camp with Big Red.
It was hazing. Like, that was her only option.
I guess.
That was pretty much like her payment to
be part of the clique.
Captain.
So yeah, she ends up dropping the spirit stick, and everyone is like, "No, we can't use it." And then this other
Whoever
cheerleader,
drops the spirit stick goes to Hades.
Hades. Like her the voice gets all deep and like distorted. It was pretty funny.
But I mean, those are I like the heightened dramatization of that interaction because that's honestly like the way a lot of my interactions with people at sleepaway camps felt in high school. Like, there's so much pressure, you're there to work on something specific, so things just actually feel like that when you're a teenager.
Right.
One thing I really like about this is that they show Torrance going beyond just wanting to use Missy as being the best.
Like a ringer.
I guess. What is a ringer?
So a ringer is when you bring somebody in who's like incredibly good at the sport that you're doing.
Got
That's
it.
not from the area, but you bring them in and you change boundaries or whatever. Like in the Mighty Ducks, which we didn't cover.
Right. So Missy, I mean, like, she's obviously a game changer. She sets in motion all these things because she used to play, or her football team when she was in Los Angeles used to play Compton, which is how she knew those cheers. So she moved there because they had no gymnastics team, and gymnastics was like her whole life.
Right.
And I really like this about the character in that she's really tough and obviously doesn't want to do the whole bimbo cheerleader thing because that's the way you feel when you're a gymnast. Like, I was a gymnast. We had to, I think, one of the 3 days a week that I would do gymnastics, the cheerleaders would be rehearsing in the opposite end of the gym. And it was always a little tense because they looked at us as like, you know, the kind of like dowdy, ugly version of what they do. And we looked at them as like, you know, the bobble-headed bimbo version of what we did. And we didn't really talk to each other. We didn't want to associate with each other. That's usually the kind of contentious relationship that these two teams have in whatever forum they're in together. So I really enjoyed that she was like, no, I need to do a sport and this is as close as I can get. So here I am. And initially Torrance just wanted to make sure she had the best in the squad. But then she like took this girl under her wing, recognizing that she needed the support and she needed the support of the whole squad, and she had to kind of integrate her.
Right.
But then like their friendship grew beyond that, beyond just like using each other. So I really liked that, and that they're such different characters and they learned from each other and grew into this really great friendship throughout the film, which you don't always see like in these teen films. A lot of times you get a really superficial version of girls' relationships with each other, and most of the time they're kind of portrayed as like universally catty towards even their friends.
Well, what I also liked about Missy is a couple things. Like, she still kept to her, like, kind of stuck to her guns the whole movie, but she did adjust and become a little softer, but in her own way. Like, she was soft, like you mentioned with Torrance, but you see her kind of timid at the first cheerleading game or the football game, and then
she's like, I don't know if I want to put on this skirt.
But then after she sees and then like the guys like woo her and Torrance woos her, and so she kind of like feels a little bit more comfortable, so she does a little cute little dance, and then when she gets to the game, initially she's all timid and she doesn't do any of the cheers, and then she sees that people are really into it. Like, people go to the football games to watch the cheerleaders, not the football team, and so then she gets really into it, and you kind of see a moment where she flips and is super into it. I really like that. But then I also like, even when before she was in at the tryouts, you know, she did what they asked her to do. She did all the crazy flips and stuff that they did, and then they asked her to do a cheer, and so she didn't do the cheer. But she made one up on the fly that was snarky, but it worked. So it was like, I transferred from Los Angeles. The school doesn't have gym.
No,
this is my last resort.
This school has no gymnastics team. This is a last resort.
Right. But, you know, the cadence was there and everything. It was good. And so it was like, that shows that she has all the skills she needs to do this. She just needs to get bought in.
Right.
And then, of course, you mentioned all the stuff that she does to drive the plot forward, you know, because she has the link to the Clovers. And, you know, she kind of keeps Torrance honest. Because there was a point where Torrance was just going to keep going with, you know, the stolen routines. But she kind of acted as like her Jiminy Cricket conscience-like character. But then she also has her brother. And the brother's a huge part of the movie as well. So Cliff, played by Jesse Bradford, who was in a lot of these kind of like teen movies at the time, I actually was really impressed with his, because he's another character you would think he's just I'm the punk rock dude, and I'm super cool, and I think I'm too cool for everything. And he gives off that vibe initially, but he legitimately seems to try to get to know everybody he interacts with. And what I liked is he clearly thought that cheerleaders were bimbos and kind of dumb, but he kind of had this, he noticed that Torrance had the advanced chemistry book, and he was like, oh, maybe this cheerleader isn't just stupid. Maybe my like preconceived notions are wrong. So he legitimately like asks her like what it's about being a cheerleader, and he seems genuinely interested in learning. And then he shows up to the games to see her, obviously has a crush on her, But he seems actually interested in the thing that she's interested in as a way like, well, this is something you're interested in, so I want to support you in it.
Right.
Even though I don't really understand it.
And he has some of the best one-liners. Like when he's trying to encourage her in her sport, he's like, come on, you get to wear sassy outfits, you get to yell like you care about something.
Right. Yeah, he was great. And then
when she's telling him about the competition, how he should go and it'll be fun and people are cheering, he's like, wait, people cheering
for
cheerleaders?
Yeah. And then, he also keeps her honest. There's a point where she's like having a meltdown and she's like, I don't know if I can do this. And he's like, don't.
Yeah.
And he basically is like, you're the best at this. If anybody's going to come out on top of this, he's like, I don't know anything about cheerleading, but clearly you do. You can find a way out of this. But he also says along the lines, and he kind of mentions that, he sees that she's smart too. Mm-hmm. So he's just super supportive. And at this point, like, even though it's clear he likes her, he's super supportive of Torrance. And it's clear that he likes her, mm-hmm. but he doesn't really know much about her. He doesn't know if she has a boyfriend or anything. So he's not like openly.
It's like safe to assume she doesn't with the way that she flirts with him.
Right.
She has cheer sex with him.
Yeah. So he clearly is into her, but she hasn't explicitly like said anything. So he kind of like keeps a respectful distance and like tries to build a friendship first, which I thought was impressive. And then once he finds out that she has a boyfriend, he doesn't get like upset really. Like he's disappointed. But he still shows up to the cheerleading competition to support her and his sister.
Well, he's hurt because she did kind of string him along.
She did lead him on.
He shows up at her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers for her.
Right. And this is still after he found out and gives her the gift of the tape that he made with the song that he wrote for her. He still gives it to her, and he just basically like respectfully backs off. Like he doesn't like give her any like grief over it. Like he's just like a generally good guy. Mm-hmm. And then when she apologizes and they get together, like he's not afraid of like public affection. Yeah, all in all, I just thought he was a really good dude.
He is a good dude. And
all his t-shirts that he wore, they were actually the director Peyton Reed, who actually did the 2 Ant-Man movies.
Right. That's kind of gross.
Yeah,
like I heard about them
shirts.
like if a director for a film was like, yeah, you're gonna wear shirts from my personal collection, I'd be like, that's weird.
It is a little weird, but it does fit the character.
It's just odd for something with such a big budget.
Right. But I think it gives credit to that character that he actually is into that music, where you would have these vintage shirts. So I get it, but no, I do agree that is a little strange to be wearing somebody else's clothes like that.
Another character I really liked, and totally like opposite end of the spectrum. She's a smaller character. I don't actually know her name, but she's basically like the thesaurus girl, because at the beginning of the film, she's just taken the SATs. And so, how everyone has like their SAT words, and she's just trying to like slip these big words into every single conversation.
And she brings up her score like 2 or 3 times throughout the movie.
She's like totally amped about it, but the entire time she's just confusing people because they have no idea what she's saying.
That was pretty good.
And it doesn't alter the scene at all. It's just like these bit lines that are thrown in the middle.
I didn't remember her at all.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I did think that was pretty funny, and people call her on it too, like towards the middle of the movie, and they're like, "Will you knock it off?"
It's just fun. Like, it's a fun movie. It's
toothbrushing
definitely
scene.
Oh, the toothbrushing scene was so cute.
What's funny is before we watched this movie, over the holiday we went and visited a friend, and they were watching music videos, and they pulled up an Ariana Grande music video. I don't know which song it was, but it was just a video making fun of a bunch of these teen dramas from the early 2000s. So, she dresses up as like a Mean Girls character, and you have all these people that look like the characters from Mean Girls, and it had the love interest from Mean Girls in it,
Erin Samuels.
And then they made fun of this, and it showed her brushing her teeth with some guy, and they were doing the same thing where they were like covering the spit and then spitting. But this scene, like, they had great chemistry, Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Bradford.
Oh yeah, totally.
And that scene is kind of their first big openly flirting scene.
Right.
That was the last scene that they filmed.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's the last scene they filmed for the movie.
That's so fun. Like, it's something that I completely forgot about in childhood and in teens, because so many times you have friends who have siblings who are like a year older or a year younger. And whenever they had, you know, like a slightly older teenage brother, it was always just awkward because all the girls would be like scamming on the brother and everyone's trying to ignore it. And the brother, I mean, they're teenage boys, so let's be real.
Right.
So they're like trying to spend as much time in the girls' slumber party as possible.
Right.
It's just a dynamic I completely forgot about existing until watching this movie. And like, it's exciting, you know, like going to someone's house and like seeing a boy in his natural habitat. Because I didn't have any brothers.
Right. So I'm the oldest. So
Such a teenage girl, like fluttery feeling.
I had that happen to me where like I would go to my brother's play or whatever when he was in elementary school and I was in middle school, or when I was in high school and he was doing something in middle school, and I would go and like you would see the girls looking at me and it was like super awkward. But I mean, even that scene in this movie is great. So she's hanging out with Missy, and then she's like, "Oh, I need to go to the bathroom or brush my teeth or whatever it is." She says she needs to do.
She's having a sleepover,
right? But she said she makes an excuse because she wants to go see the guy because he's playing the guitar. And then she's just kind of watching. He's just shredding and having fun. And he doesn't notice for the longest time. But then when he
rolling
does,
around on the floor,
he gets this big smile. And then he just like really goes over the top with like the power strumming and everything like that and power stance. And
then you get that sibling dynamic where Missy comes in and kind of like gives them a look. I really like their sibling dynamic was good.
They made fun of each other, but they clearly loved each other. Yeah. And, you know, she helped wingman. She was his wingman. Like, she was the wingman for both of them. Like, she thought it was a little weird because, you know, how close they all are. But she supported it and tried to help them out. And, you know, it kind of contrasted the relationship with Torrance and her brother because there was just animosity the whole time. And he shows up to the cheerleading thing saying, like, death is cheering or something like that. Like, he's not supportive at all.
Cheerleading is death.
Yeah, cheerleading is death. And here you have, you know, these characters who are openly saying really mean things to each other throughout the whole movie.
Right.
But clearly they are friends and they support each other in all their endeavors. Yeah, that's a really great family relationship. I mean, we didn't see their parents at all.
Right. So one thing we haven't talked about is the whole dynamic of her finding out before they get to that last big competition that the Clovers can't afford to go.
Oh, yeah.
They won. They're going to go to are they final? I don't even know.
No, it's like the Nationals.
The Nationals. And it's like a competition they deserve to be at and they can't raise the money, or it seems like they're not going to be able to raise the money. So she like goes to her father and, you know, how like so many times companies will sponsor kids programs and stuff. So it sounds like he's familiar with his company funding things that she asks for. And she's like, you know, they deserve to be there. And she gets like, you know, all social justice warrior about it, but way back in the day.
Right.
So she gets a check from her dad's company and she goes and takes it to the Clovers. And in the meantime, they've gone to a talk show host who is going to pay their way. So they kind of like already know, but what is the captain's name? Gabrielle Union's character?
I know this.
So the captain of the Clovers, you know, decides like she's gonna use this as an opportunity to sort of like establish herself as the alpha. She tears up the check, but she already knows that they're gonna get ISIS. ISIS tears up the check and, you know, kind of stokes the fire a little bit before this last big competition. And I thought that was really great to see that the character cared about getting them there. It was also like a little problematic in that she wasn't sort of like letting them solve their own problem.
Well, it wasn't. It was also out of a place of selfishness as well, because she wanted to compete against the best. A lot of it was like a mutual respect. She wants them to have that experience,
right?
But she also feels that she wants to be the best, and the only way she can be the best is if she competes against the best,
right? So this interaction kind of like stokes this competition a little bit more, and it drives the animosity a little bit deeper. But then throughout the competition, you know, they're kind of like giving each other pointers. Like when they're first going to go out on the floor, she's like, hey, make sure you don't have any of your girls step out of bounds. They're really strict about these stupid little things.
Right.
So they kind of like give each other tips throughout the competition. They start to build this like down low camaraderie where they just like respect each other and understand each other.
Well, I think that actually starts at the scene where they say bring it on, which is when she tries to give them that check, because obviously that's showing some respect. Like that was Torrance painting ISIS as an equal at that moment. Like, you need to be there. You deserve to be there. And because it's the first day of the competition, right when they see each other is when they
Right,
big
but the
things
rest of the team at that point is like, oh, it's on. Like,
Right.
she's our enemy.
Right. So it's almost like, and this movie is nowhere near as good as Heat. Heat is considered one of the best movies at all. But it's very similar to that scene in Heat where Robert De Niro and Al Pacino get together for the first time. That's the first time they ever meet on screen. And, you know, that's why that movie was such a big deal. But they have this back and forth where Al Pacino plays the cop, and he's supposed to be the best cop in the city, and he's going after Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro is this master criminal. And they both kind of paint each other as equals and say, if anybody, he basically says, if anybody's going to catch me, it's going to be you. And if he's like, and if anyone's going to catch you, it's going to be me. And if I have to, I'll kill you. And he's like, same thing. It was like very much like that, where it's like, we respect each other, but we got to do what's right. And I'm going to beat you. And the other person's like, I'm going to beat you. And I there was a real connection in that scene. I really liked it.
I mean, other than that, like the routines that they did, of course, they up the ante every
As the movie
year.
went forward, yeah.
No, I mean in real life. In real life,
Oh, yeah.
cheerleading now is far and away incredible and just completely eclipses anything that people were doing at that time back
Right.
then, because kids are starting younger, they're getting more competitive.
More
But
flippy flips.
at the time, like, these were really great routines to see, especially like of course, like the actors, they're pretty much just prancing around in the front of the routines.
Right.
But they kind of shoot it in such a way that they can sort of blend them in with the actual acrobats and cheerleaders who perform the routines.
Right.
And they do really good stuff. It's fun to watch, it's entertaining, and it's a good payoff for this whole film. If they didn't have really tight, like actually pretty good routines, this whole movie would have just felt like a waste of time.
Oh, absolutely. And what was interesting is as the movie progressed, the routines got more sophisticated.
Right.
And
Like, they weren't perfect,
no, absolutely
but they were
not.
still fun to watch.
But by the end, when you get to the big competition, you see the Clover's final, show and the Toros final show. The Toros got second place, and the Clovers won. And I think they did deserve to win. I thought their thing was way better.
And I loved that they won, even though they're not really the protagonists of the film.
Right.
Like, you want the Toros to win for the most part to kind of pull through. But I like that the more deserving team won.
I agree.
It was a good twist.
And one of the things that was weird going into this movie, I thought we spent more time with the Clovers. And I thought, Gabrielle Union had a bigger part in this. I'm trying to rack my brain where they actually say her name. I really don't remember them saying her name in the movie. She wasn't in the movie that much. Like, this really was Kirsten Dunst's film. And she, you got a little pocket. But I think, like you said, the better team did win. But yeah, she wasn't really a protagonist. And I don't even know if I would call her a main character.
Right. Her scenes had so much weight, and she was so good in what she did do on screen that I think the character just feels bigger.
Right, I agree, because, the Clovers don't really do much.
Right.
Other than just kind
Drive
of...
the plot forward.
It's almost like... Grease has a little bit more with rival gangs, but it's almost like a movie where, like, the rival gangs just show up and just like, and then they run off. Like,
right. So overall, I had a really great time revisiting this film. Definitely raunchier than I remember. Actually, There's a bit of trivia. The scene where Whitney says she'll be easy to toss and she doesn't give lip to Jan, and then they reply, just tongue. That was an MPAA edit because he originally said just head, and they changed the line to just tongue to keep the PG-13 rating.
Interesting. The only other ones that I have, and I think we mentioned a lot of these already, or at least our listener David did, but they all had to go through a cheerleading boot camp.
Right.
Kirsten Dunst.
They did illegal moves.
Yeah.
Actually.
Well, the other thing,
moves you can't do in a high school competition.
Well, they also had exposed midriffs, which you can't have
right.
in high school. At least at that time. I don't know if that's
still
still
but when they all like 25, you can push it a little. That is something I really grapple with watching these teen movies from the 90s and 2000s, is they sexualize the hell out of these high school characters, and like it's kind of like bordering on, this is an adult, but they're portraying a child, and we're seeing some really racy stuff sometimes.
Well, it's like the same thing with any of like the slasher films. Like, they're always like high school students, and then they're having sex, and there's like explicit nudity.
Not that high
schoolers
schoolers don't have sex, but it's kind of like if you're portraying someone underage on screen, like, where's that
line where it's like you're kind of fantasizing the only other thing that I have that I just thought this was kind of funny. So there's a scene where Missy, Torrance, Jen, and Les, those are the two male cheerleaders, are carpooling together, and basically, you see the guy who's driving is constantly looking in the mirrors, and a lot of people were asking why, apparently, when this movie came out, but it turns out the motorcade was slowing down traffic on the freeway. They were actually driving on the freeway, and this guy was swerving, getting pissed, and like honking at them. And so, you know how they have cops following these motorcades. A cop circled back.
Yeah, I've been on sets where people make it through the block, and it's scary.
Yeah, so that happened. This guy kind of got through, so he got pulled over and was getting a ticket and was like yelling at the cop. So like this guy was driving and still trying to watch what was going on.
That's so scary. That's like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, it's
because I've filmed on like in live traffic, and it is terrifying.
I believe it.
No thanks.
So, ruin your childhood?
No, this movie actually came out a lot better.
Yeah, it was really fun, and it
not
went
that
quick.
The quality is a lot better. It's
a bad movie.
It's more fun, and I was much more entertained than I anticipated being.
Right. It's a bad movie, but it's fun. Like it's not a good movie. I was surprised.
But it pokes fun at itself.
It's very
being
self-aware.
Bad. Yeah.
Yeah, which it works, but it's not like Sharknado where it's like we set out to make a bad movie so bad that it's a good movie. Like it's just what it is.
I like it.
Yeah, I liked it too. It was fun. So what are we going to cover on our next episode, Katrina?
The quintessential modeling film, Zoolander.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
This is peak Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson.
Peak Ben Stiller. I do not have high expectations for this one.
I saw the sequel not too long ago, and it was really bad.
Oh.
And watching it seemed like it had all the same jokes from the original, so I don't know if I didn't like it because was treading old ground, or if I was just like, this is bad. So
it's kind of in the same vein as Austin Powers, but without enough cheek to really pull it off.
Right, like but it's also not a joke every minute, so it's gonna. I think it will be a little bit easier to talk about than like an Austin Powers or Spaceballs or something like that.
I think it's gonna be painful.
All right, well, that's what we'll cover next week or next episode.
See.
Where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinosity. Check out my YouTube channel.
Check out us on YouTube. You can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and that's pretty much it. But check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/MDXpods. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.